Regarding Men with Janice Fiamengo, Paul Elam, and Tom Golden. Episode 6, NCFM Wins Selective Service Court Battle. Welcome, everyone, to Regarding Men number 6. Yes, we've done this 5 times, and we're on number 6 today, and we've got quite a show for you. I'm here with Janice Fiamengo and Paul Elam, and I'm Tom Golden. We're going to talk about something positive for a change. Something positive. Yeah, there was this NCFM court case where the judge has ruled that it is unconstitutional to draft only men. How about that? That sounds like a good thing, don't you think? I talked to Harry Crouch this morning, and listen to what Harry has to say.
Well, number one, obviously, we, NCFM, is pretty excited about the decision. It's been 4.5 years in the making. And we think it's a landmark case that will have a positive impact on our culture and society for years to come in ways we haven't even identified yet. However, with respect strictly to a selective service system, we didn't get injunctive relief. In other words, the judge did not stop selective service from operating until it required women to sign a register for selective service. Instead, it was declaratory relief. And basically, the judge passed the buck back to Congress, which is okay. We think that's a pretty adroit decision, considering Congress has a commission right now examining the selective service system and anticipates releasing a final report sometime in 2020. Of course, we don't know how that might go. Nonetheless, this ruling, which found that the selective service to be unconstitutional, should certainly put pressure on Congress as well as the commission.
Indeed, Harry. Indeed. So good news from Harry. And where do we go from here? What do you guys think of this?
Well, I think one of the things that I want to sort of inject in this from the beginning is a question. There is another side to this. And I'm not saying that I'm taking it, but I'm saying that I'm assuming part of our audience will, in particular, people who are either military or former military. There are a number of men in the military who do not want to be serving alongside women, particularly in combat situations.
Yes.
So
for good reason.
This is a definite, and I'm for the decision. I think it was a good decision. I think it was a needed decision and an important one. I think Harry's right. There's going to be implications well into the future that we can't even begin to comprehend right now. He also pointed out in that statement that he made that Congress already has a commission looking on this. I found it interesting. You'll find linked below a copy of the decision if you want to slog through all of it. But it was interesting that Selective Service used that congressional investigation as a reason why they didn't want the court to hear the case. They were saying that made it unripe for examination by the court because of the separation of powers, and Congress was already looking at it. And a hat tip, a very, very reluctant hat tip to the Ninth Circuit, which I hate to do.
It's all right.
Credit where it's due. They said, no, that's not good enough. And the court, the case was moved to Texas. I think it's a great decision. I do have concerns about chivalry on the battlefield.
Mm-hmm.
I have concerns about capability of the average woman, given their bone density, muscle mass, other factors that the Pentagon has known for years. Now, there are certainly combat positions, pilots and other combat positions that women have done quite well at. And certainly I wouldn't close those doors to them. But the one thing that bothers me at all about the unknown implications about the rulings is that it may help further a narrative that on the battlefield, men and women are equals. Mm-hmm. And they're not. And to try to approach a combat situation or even training as though men and women are equals could be very dangerous and very foolhardy.
Yes. Yeah, I hear people talk about the whole idea that if a woman goes down, that everything stops in order to save her rather than take care of what needs to be done. And I can really understand that. The whole gynocentric, chivalry thing would just kick in and it'd become a huge mess. But yeah, I think the decision to me is good because it puts it out in the open and it makes people have to deal with it. They have to deal with it. It's interesting to me that the congressional commission that they talked about, that you talked about, Paul, that said that, don't have a court case because of this commission, is there because a few years ago, the Senate recommended that women be a part of the draft. And someone nixed it and said, no, we're not doing that. Here, let's start a commission. So the commission was started because they had actually recommended it to begin with. So
that's very interesting.
it is.
Yeah,
It is.
I mean, I think that this is a fantastic symbolic decision.
Yes.
That it, I think, forces a conversation about what it means to say that America is founded on the idea, or that our current society is founded on the idea of gender equality. What does that actually mean?
Yes.
And I think this is going to potentially, anyway, force some higher level of honesty into discussions about what gender equality actually is. And maybe before we get into that a little bit more, we should make clear that, as far as I understand it, so this does not mean that women now are required to sign up to the Selective Services
Yes.
Act. As of now, it continues only to accept male registrants, and that will be the case for the foreseeable future. The judge in this case, the Texas judge, merely deemed that requiring a male-only draft is unconstitutional. He did not direct Congress to make it that women would be forced to sign up. So all of this is pretty hypothetical. It may never mean that women have to sign up for a potential military draft. It may be that they get rid of the Selective Services system altogether. It's not clear how Congress will go. But and I thought it was interesting that a lot of the judgment had to do mainly with responding to a 1981 Supreme Court judgment, which had concluded that it was constitutional to restrict the draft to men only because women at that point were not allowed to serve in combat positions. But we know that that has now changed. Women have been allowed to serve in the military in non-combat positions in the peacetime military since 1948. They did serve in the Second World War in administrative and support positions. And then starting in 2013, restrictions on women serving in combat positions were lifted. And in 2016, I think all gender restrictions on women in combat positions were abolished. So it seemed to me that, I read the judgment very quickly, but it seemed to me that was one of the primary issues that it dealt with very narrowly. It was not the issue of how many women are actually going to be qualified, are going to actually have the physical qualifications to serve in the military, but it was simply saying that it was asking the question, do women and men stand in the same position in relation to the draft? And that was the judgment that the judge made, was that yes, they do, given that there are now no restrictions on women serving in the military. So yeah, it is a really fascinating issue about equality and what that actually means in practice. And Paul, you had raised the question, or you had raised the issue of how this was dealt with by Greg Gutfeld and his friends on his Fox News show, in which everybody sort of laughed it off and saw it as a kind of prank by a men's rights group.
Right.
That didn't need to be taken seriously. And I thought that was really fascinating, the level of disregard and indifference with which every single person in that group treated the issue. Oh, well, women aren't sort of inclined to combat. So it's a ridiculous idea. Why should women have to serve when, women are simply not made that way? Everyone seemed to agree that it was a nonsensical notion that of course they all agreed that some women are very, very good and should have the choice. but the fact that women should be forced to serve was anathema to everybody. And of course, missing in that whole discussion was the fact that a lot of men don't want to serve it either. A lot of men are not, a lot of men are not inclined to military combat. They don't necessarily have great physical courage and a willingness to die on behalf of their country. Men don't want to see the horrors of war. They're not necessarily in any way either physically or emotionally or psychologically suited for it. Yet this is something that has gone unaddressed and simply accepted, aside from a few men's rights organizations, as a part of the culture, that men simply have to suck up, with serious penalties if men don't, of course, register for selective service. They can be fined. They are not eligible for education.
5 years in prison and $10,000.
I mean, that's serious stuff. So somehow that's okay, but suddenly to start requiring that of women is considered, beyond the pale by even, a kind of anti-feminist group such as Gutfeld's group of discussants there. So I thought that was really, really interesting, and I'm very interested to see the kinds of arguments that are going to be made now over the next couple of years by feminist groups and by other groups about why this, is or is not a good idea.
Yes.
I think it's interesting too that there's a group called the Service Women's Action Network, and they are in favor of a draft for women. Mainly, they make the point that this is an equality issue. I was interested to see that women should be held to the same standards in terms of service and in terms of their commitment to serving their country. So I thought that was very interesting. At the same time, though, they also made it about that this would do away with the last plank of anti-female discrimination, that it would no longer be possible to say that women didn't have an equal role in serving their country. And that's where it seems to me we right away get into kind of a dangerous territory. If we make this about proving something about women, and we make this about serving a feminist agenda, that's what I find very worrisome, because there are all sorts of, I'm totally mixed on this issue. There are all sorts of reasons why, on the basis of basic equality, why, if we're going to claim that women are equal to men, then why shouldn't women be drafted?
Exactly.
At the same time, is this going to mean that more men die? Is this going to mean that our fighting forces are less effective? Certainly there was I think it was the Marine Corps did a study in 2015, or at least released the results of the study in 2015, that found that all male combat units, when it came to military exercises on the field, they did a year-long study, all male combat units were far more effective. They were faster, they were more lethal, they were far more capable of recovering casualties and wounded from the field, to the degree, I think, at 69% more effective than gender mixed units. So that's very, very concerning, certainly, when we think about what this is going to mean for men in combat units. Even if some women can meet the physical requirements in training, are they actually going to be equal to men in combat situations? Everything that we seem to know now about how women respond in these situations is that very few are able to deal with the emotional and the psychological, let alone the physical demands. Women's ligaments are less strong than men. They tend to sustain far more injuries. They tend to break under the pressure, the horrific conditions of combat.
And it's not just that either. There's another part of this, why that equality I think will never be there. One, we have to understand, and it's going on all the time right now, women can exit theater at any point simply by becoming pregnant. And unless we're going to start building armored baby carriers, strollers, for the battlefield, what we're going to see, and this depletes force readiness. But this is one of the dirty secrets in the Pentagon they never talk about. Imagine how easy it is for a woman to get pregnant on an Army base.
Oh boy.
And so we have that. Even those that are capable of doing all the work can't be relied on to carry their training all the way through to the end. Because when things get tough, a lot of women do. And it's understandable. You know, I was in the service. There was plenty of things I did that I hated doing and that I wish I could have gotten out of. I'm not, pointing a condescending finger at anybody about this. But when you have that opportunity, and then the government, of course, pays for all the medical and everything else that goes along with it, and women take a tidy package and go home with their new bundle of joy, while the men that have been assigned to the same job remain there. I wanted to also talk for a moment about the Gutfeld episode, which I thought was fascinating. It's linked below if you want to sit through five idiots making commentary. But to me, it's really reflective of just how difficult. Janice was talking about that we're going to be having a social conversation about this, and how difficult that is. Watch that episode or even that segment of the Gutfeld show. I'm a fan of Greg Gutfeld and most of the people that were on that show. But you watch the difficulty that they had, even being remotely intellectually honest. One, I don't know, I'm dating myself. I grew up watching the Three Stooges, and where they would do the slap across all three faces at one time, pop, pop, pop. I wanted to line all five of these people up and do a Five Stooges slap on all of them. I may have been sorry when I got to Tyrus, but I still wanted to do it. But just for the record, watch it for yourself. One, Tyrus's position on this, what he was, and I quote, out shooting hoops when men had this discussion. In other words, the subtext of what he was saying is, I'm too much of a man to be involved. I'm too manly to be involved in this kind of weak stuff.
Right.
And Gutfeld was agreeing with him, essentially saying, yeah, guys really don't care. We were okay with the way things were, as though he spoke for all men. But to me, this was posturing for the women that were there sitting in the group. And then there was, as far as the women was concerned, one of them was Kat Timpf, who disagreed with the ruling because she doesn't feel like she's suited for military service, which, essentially it's all about her. The federal ruling was all about her. The draft is all about her. Whether or not women serve in the military is all about her. Where have we heard this before? And then we had Emily Campagna, who's a legal analyst. And her big objection, get this, her huge objection to this, the court dealing with this, was that they actually spent federal dollars in a federal court,
right,
ruling on federal law and constitutional law.
Yeah, no kidding.
To her, that was the big waste of money. And of course, it was, for her, in my opinion, it was all about female privilege. The only one that got even remotely close to being honest, and let me get this guy's name, Joe DeVito. And he was basically going with the crowd. But what I noticed in all of them, and why I wanted to slap the hell out of every last one of them, is that nobody had any intellectual honesty about this subject. Tyrus talked about having a son and a daughter.
Right.
And he joked about how his daughter would be more prepared for military service. But he wasn't talking about the fact that of his son and daughter, his son was the only one that was subject to laws that could imprison him and remove his right to vote and fine him thousands of dollars. if he didn't comply with the law. Nobody got near any of that. And I understand this is a show of political comedy. And I know we're going to get in the comments. Come on, Paul, it's political comedy. It's a joke. Yes, it is political comedy. But the heart of why that show has always been so appealing to me is that they get to the matter of the facts, that's what the comedy is based on. They're dealing with the truth in a very, very intellectually honest way and making it funny, and therefore it makes it a good show. This segment was a shameful example of them doing just the opposite. All of this. They were useless.
Yes, but it was a show that actually I think was indicative of what we're going to see. Because the great thing about this court ruling is that it's going to flush out everybody's gynocentric ideas about women and about men, and it's going to force them out in the public, just like it did with Gutfeld. I mean, we're going to see more and more of this, and it's going to be like shooting fish in a barrel. It's going to be easy because you could easily tear apart anything those people said. It's so, the big thing about this case is it flushes out the crap, because this is, to me, this case was good because the combat ruling that Janice said, now women are allowed into combat, and that was their last gynocentric excuse to keep from treating women like responsible adults. They're out of excuses now. They've been having excuses for years and years and years about this. And now that combat thing, they're out of excuses. They have nowhere to turn. And,
Well, except that we still see the problem of 97% of combat fatalities being male.
I wonder
because
about that.
anybody, ask Terrence Pomp, ask anybody in the military, when somebody goes missing, if it's a female, if it's Jessica Lynch that's missing, you better believe the entire cavalry is coming out to go find that woman and get her back safe and sound.
Yes.
If you're a guy, man, you better hope you're good at surviving.
If you look at the priorities for finding someone who's missing in action, the females are at the top.
Yep.
They're at the very top.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's going to cause trouble if they are in combat,
Yeah.
Oh, well.
Yeah, this is going to be, that I think you're right, Tom, that we're going to be able to see the gynocentrism in action,
Yes.
in the conversations. What I am concerned about is that even if it does end up that women are forced to register, of course, this is all very, very hypothetical. The idea that there would be a draft is somewhat remote at this point. But even now in cases where women are voluntarily joining the military, there are all sorts of problems as far as I understand right off the bat. I don't know what the U.S., I didn't have time to research this, and I'm not even sure that it would be easy to find. But I know I have an essay in my book, Sons of Feminism, from a military colonel in the New Zealand Armed Forces. And he mentioned that there in New Zealand, I'm sure it's the same in Canada, I know it is in fact, that the requirements, the physical requirements that women have to pass to join the military are significantly lower, and that all sorts of workarounds and obfuscation and special privileges and special accommodations are made so that the military can be appearing to treat women equally, but in fact, are promoting women above men when they haven't fulfilled the same terms of service. All sorts of accommodations are made so that they can say that they're fulfilling this mandate of equality, and it just isn't possible. And he said it was awful that most men in the military now, when they're in positions of power over women, are walking on eggshells because they know that if they treat the women in the same way they treat the men, and we're just talking about basic training matters, calling out somebody because, she hasn't made her bed according to the requirements, even that kind of thing, or her boots haven't been properly cleaned. even there, they know that they're open to charges of harassment, just generalized, or creating a hostile climate, making the woman feel that she was in some way singled out, even though she's not being singled out, she's just being treated exactly as the men are. So men are afraid to even discipline women in the way that they do men. And there's all sorts of other, he was especially concerned about the problem of chivalry, the way that's going to affect men in a fighting unit, and all sorts of problems. My feeling is that I don't know. I mean, who can be against, if you really believe in gender equality? I don't see how you can be against this ruling. But my concern is that what it's going to mean is that it covers over the last issue that could be pointed to unequivocally to say, we don't have gender equality. Now we're going to have a lot of people coming forward and saying, look, there it is, proof that women are equal to men, even on the battlefield. And in fact, what it's going to mean is that women will never have to meet the same requirements as men to serve their country. They're never going to, first of all, just physically, they're not going to be able to meet the physical requirements. It'd be a fantasy to imagine that there'll be the same number of women found fit to serve in combat positions.
Right.
But that even within those combat units, there are going to be all sorts of accommodations that will have to be made. Women will be exempt from service for all sorts of reasons. You already mentioned, Paul, pregnancy. Maybe a whole bunch of women are going to suddenly become pregnant if there ever is a war where a draft is required. I don't think as a society we are ready to be seeing women coming home in the hundreds in body bags in the way that we are inured to seeing men in body bags. I don't know. I think that I'm worried that it will actually lead to a whole bunch of more problems for men, more deaths, more risk. Potentially, it will actually lower the capacity of the United States military to defend the country's interests, and that it won't actually lead to any kind of greater commitment on the part of women to really serve the country. That would be my concern.
I don't think there's any, you can't just summarily dismiss any of that.
It's going to be interesting no matter which way you slice it. And one of the things Harry told me this morning was that the judge denied the injunctive relief. In other words, he denied NCFM's request to have the draft stop doing as they're doing now. And Harry said one possibility is they're going to appeal that. So who knows what might happen. I mean, it could get more and more interesting as time goes on. Mm-hmm. And by the way, NCFM and Harry Harry's told me to please say that court cases like this cost a lot of money. And if anybody wants to donate, throw a few bucks into the can for NCFM, we'll leave a link in the low bar for that too.
Yes, we will. I'm
an NCFM
member, and I encourage others to be. They're doing great work there. It's a lot more quiet. You don't see it, out there on the internet as much. But believe me, they're doing really good work at NCFM. And it's like $50 a year to become a full member, worth every nickel of it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, I want to just say a little bit more about, I don't know what to think about this issue. I suppose one could say, well, even having women serve in these, in administrative and support services, just the symbolic idea of requiring that, women in some way, they're never going to put their bodies on the line in the same way that men do, but that at least they have the same kind of personal responsibility that men have been forced to assume over the years, that in itself might do some good. I mean, it seems to me that we're at a point now where we are adamantly denying that there is any difference between men and women at all. I mean, I've read feminist texts that even deny that there is a physical difference between men and women, that say that it's because parents, are so socially conditioned to believe that their girl children are going to be weaker than their boy children, that they feed their boys more. That they give them more meat, and that's why their muscle mass is more significant, and that's why their bone density is 50% more, and that's why their hand grip is so much stronger, and all of that. So we're at that point where we can't accept that there is any kind of difference. If we could just get to a point where at least we could have an honest conversation about that and what that means going forward, and some people have suggested that maybe the trans issue is going to be one of the triggers.
Just going to say that.
Now that there are so many trans women, competing in sports at all levels and winning in sports, finally some feminists and other women are coming out and saying, look, there is a physical difference between men and women, and even taking hormones for a year or 2 years doesn't necessarily, mean that the sexes are equal, or that mean that trans women aren't actually physically much stronger than
I would love
women
to
born
see
as
us
women.
all have a discussion about that one, especially given the recent ruling by the Olympic Committee that
Yes.
they are going to allow trans
Yes.
into the Olympics.
Mhm. Yeah.
We should
Where
do
they
that
will,
next
just
week.
like they have in high schools and colleges and other places, where the trans women will push real women or biological women out of competition, denying them any opportunities for scholarships, for victories, for medals, in order to continue the crazy narrative that there's no difference physiologically between men and women, that it's all social construct.
Yes. Maybe we should do that one next week, Paul.
I'm all for it. If
Yeah,
you
that'd be
guys
fun.
want to.
Because it really has put feminists in a very difficult spot.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
It's a difficult spot because their whole thing is based on there are no physical differences between men and women, but now they've got to say, wait a minute, yes, there are physical, and so that's another thing that's being flushed out, it's being pushed up.
Mm-hmm.
So, yay.
Mm-hmm.
Yay for that.
Yeah, very interesting. And it's interesting to see them contorting themselves into pretzels now to backtrack on 20 years of adamant feminist advocacy.
Yes. Yeah. Get your popcorn.
I'd like to maybe add one more thing to our draft discussion that I had thought about and had wanted to include in this. And I think the Greg Gutfeld show was part of that. I think the danger of this being overturned is actually probably higher in a more conservative Supreme Court,
right,
than it would be in a more liberal one. Hate to say it, but I think it's true. And this is why I take always, and this is not said to just provoke, this is why I'm a big fan of Janice Fiamengo and not such a big fan of Christina Hoff Sommers, who I view as a entertainment, anti-feminist conservative, who still espouses feminist dogma, who still tries to convince us. And I know people disagree with this, that's fine. She's an asset in many ways. She's very entertaining. But when it comes down to having an honest discussion of that gynocentrism's role in things, we don't get this from the conservative movement at all. They will talk about anti-feminism. They will talk about how crazy feminists are. They'll have Kathy Aru on Tucker Carlson at night because she's bug-eyed and goofy and kind of fun to laugh at. But when it gets down to the real issues of gynocentrism driving these terrible, terrible policies that we have, they won't get near it, and they will work against us.
And so will the liberals.
Yes,
that's our problem.
So that's why it's on us. That's why I enjoyed this discussion and others. It is on other people than what we consider the normal political spectrum to bring these issues to the table and have them actually discussed.
Yes.
Because
Republicans, Democrats,
we consider allies are often on the wrong side of these issues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And almost everybody is on the wrong side of these issues. That's the problem. I mean, Democrat or Republican, they're both.
That really sucks.
It does suck. And, we're pretty strange. We have a very unique viewpoint. And it's glad we're out there talking about it.
And to remind everybody, we will be talking about it more come August in Chicago. There will be a link below where there will be all kinds of discussions about gynocentrism and other matters that affect men and boys at the International Conference on Men's Issues for 2019. So get your tickets early. Early ticket purchasing has been extended, and we're ready to go up there and have some fun.
So do we give NCFM the award?
Yes, I think we do.
Indeed. They deserve it. They deserve it. But now who gets the PUTA?
We didn't even discuss that beforehand.
We'll have to talk about it now. Who gets the PUTA?
Now?
Who gets it?
For me, my nominee is Emily Campagna for her objection to spending federal money for a court to decide on a federal court case.
I agree. That was ridiculous.
When it came to the Three Stooges slap, I want her first in line. And so she's my nominee for the Flying Puta.
Accepted.
It's mine too. Yeah.
Accepted.
Yeah.
Emily's the Flying Puta. There's
there it goes. Right across the screen. Thank you, Emily.
So are we finished for the day?
We're finished. Special. We give our acknowledgement to Harry. We should also absolutely have him share that acknowledgement with Mark Angelucci.
Yes.
He really headed up so much of the legal work on this case, kept everybody posted, still managed to come to Australia to speak at a conference in the middle of all this. He is a great MRA.
He has been doing work for years and years.
He has.
Away, and he does good work. Bless you, Mark. Absolutely. Thanks for saying that, Paul. So we're good?
Yeah, I think we're good.
Who else is good?
We're good.
Men are good.
Men are good.
Men are good.
Right. Oh, God.
Don't worry, Janice. He had to train me in that one.
Okay,
I won't comment on that one.
one.
I won't comment on that one. We'll see you guys. We'll see if I can.
Bye.
Bye-bye.